Let's begin by telling you that the Senate on Tuesday speedily passed the National Minimum Wage Act 2019. The bill, which scared the first, second and third readings just minutes after it was transmitted by President Bola Tinubu, was instantly passed by the upper chamber. Earlier on Tuesday, the president transmitted the National Minimum Wage Bill to the National Assembly for consideration and passage. The president separately wrote the Senate and House of Representatives requesting expedited consideration of a bill for an act to amend the National Minimum Wage Act 2019 to increase the national minimum wage from 30,000 to 70,000 naira. The president also asked the lawmakers to reduce the time for the periodic review of the national minimum wage from 5 years to 3 years and related matters. In the meantime, the Nigeria Labour Congress has called on President Bola Tinubu to dialogue with leaders of an upcoming nationwide protest that aims to address the severe hardship faced by citizens. In a statement by NLC President Joe Ajayi, the union highlighted the urgency of the situation, with inflation soaring to 34.1% and food and electricity prices skyrocketing. Ajayi emphasized the necessity for the president to engage with the protesters and address their grievances. He also condemned dismissal of Nigerians suffering as merely politically motivated, saying citizens demand a government that listens and empathizes. As the date for the protest approaches, the NLC's call underscores the need for dialogue and responsive leadership. The Central Bank of Nigeria has raised the monetary policy rate by 50 basis points from 26.25% to 26.75% in response to soaring inflation and skyrocketing food prices. CBN Governor Olayemi Kadoso announced the increase on Tuesday during the Apex Bank's 296th Monetary Policy Committee meeting in Abuja. The MPC also set the cash reserve ratio for deposit money banks at 45%, while merchant banks will see their CRR adjusted to 14%. The liquidity ratio has also been set at 30%. The MPC meeting is convened to assess the country's economic and financial conditions and determine the appropriate monetary policy direction for the short to medium term. Group Chief Executive Officer, NNPC, Mele Kyari, has denied owning a blending plant in Malta. He also states that he's unaware of any Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited employee who owns such a facility in the European island country. In a post on his X social media handle on Tuesday, Kyari challenged President of Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, to publicly identify any NNPC personnel involved with a blending plant in Malta. Dangote, Africa's wealthiest man and owner of a $20 billion refinery in Lagos, had claimed over the weekend that certain NNPC staff and oil traders are operating a blending plant in Malta, which he argues is hindering local production of petroleum products. Regulatory authorities have also raised concerns about the quality of petroleum products produced at a refinery in the Lekki Free Trade Zone. And to unpack these about the Minimum Wage Act and also the CBN press briefing on interest rate and also Dangote refinery saga, I'm joined by the head of Fixed Income and FX, and that's Oladipo Ajayi. Good afternoon. Glad to have you join me on the news.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me on.
All right, it's my pleasure. Let me kick off by asking what your thoughts are, on the new national minimum wage now, passed now into law as 70,000 naira. Your thoughts?
Well, my initial expectation is that I was thinking that the federal government would be able to actually take a big leap to 100,000 naira. But when you also check the current recurrent expenditure of the government as well, that's one of the reasons why they actually maintain like a 100% increase. And I just feel that is one step towards the right direction. And the other thing also, the fact that the review, minimum wage review now has been changed to more like every 3 years compared to the initial every 5 years. So it also simply means that in the next 3 years, we can always come back to the table and also renegotiate based on the prevailing issues at that particular point in time.
Just to touch on something interesting you mentioned, you said your expectations were 100,000 naira as the new minimum wage. I mean, critics say this may further shore up inflation in Nigeria. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't think that we'll have to actually battle with aggressive inflation from 100,000 naira because when you look at current inflationary pressure, it's more of a supply side than demand side. And it's not the fact that people's capacity or real income has increased. It's not that people are buying more than what they used to buy before, but because of the fact that the prices of what they used to buy has increased aggressively. So I don't think 100,000 would have created that huge inflationary pressure that anyone would have actually been perturbed about. I think it would have been the best thing that would have actually improved the standard of living of people. And also what that would have done is that it will also increase the capacity of people to actually consume, which in turn will actually help people that are actually working in the manufacturing sectors, and they will actually have reason to actually increase production, which will also help employment levels.
Okay, let's touch on the increase in monetary policy rate from 26.25% to 26.75%. What impacts do you foresee on businesses and also consumers in Nigeria?
Well, I'm not an advocate of increase and in MPC, this current MPR rate. My view has been that the MPC will actually just discuss about the prevailing issue and actually give a poor guidance. But I'm actually surprised that we saw another 50 basis point rate hike. Currently, it has taken us to 26.75 now. And what it means to businesses is that in the days to come, they should be expecting lesser from the banks, actually advising them of the increase in monetary policy rate, and as a result, increase in their existing loans with the bank. And that has been the challenges. Now, most businesses actually borrowed funds from central bank around 34%. And imagine with another 50 basis point, meaning around 34.5 to about 35%. And this is actually not so good for businesses. And I'm actually not surprised if people that actually operate in the SMEs, MSMEs industry are actually complaining because the richest man in Africa also complained about this elevated rate level and the impact on businesses. So I don't think it's actually a very good one for business owners. And on the back of central bank, they actually mentioned that the view is to continue to rein in inflation. But at the same time, I also think that we also need to look at what will be the full impact. I would have expected them to allow us the full impact of the new policies and direction of the fiscal policy guides. We've seen the fiscal policy guide mentioning about giving tax holidays and also allowing importation of some food items so as to actually reduce food inflation. I would have expected them to allow us to seal the full impact of this, maybe wait till September before they can actually make a decisive decision. But there's nothing we can do. We just need to find a way to actually align with the new rates.
Okay, just to come in there, Mr. Ajayi, you touched on the impact of this increase in MPR, on SMEs and also MSMEs. Now, with liquidity ratio now pegged at 30%, how do you foresee this affecting lending activities and also overall economic growth in Nigeria?
Well, liquidity rate has always been at 30%, but the concern has always been the capacity of the banks to actually lend money. Because if you look at the corridors now, the corridors has been adjusted from plus 300 minus 100 to plus 500 minus 100. So what that simply means is that if a bank is short of liquidity and needs to actually access the standard lending facility window, which is the SLF window, they will have to borrow from central bank at 26.75 plus 5%, and that is already 31.75. So it simply means that if banks is borrowing from central bank at 31.75, what rate do you think they will actually lend money to their customers? If banks is borrowing at 31.75 from the central bank when they need maybe urgent liquidity gap measures to actually fund their liquidity gap. Of course, it means that most of the time they would rather just stay out of that window and not extend any loans to anybody. Most times, the direction for most banks will not be actually just preserve the liquidity they have, and nobody wants to take risk with liquidity they have now. So I wouldn't be surprised if we are not seeing increase in the level of creating risk assets on the back or the part of the bank. So I don't think this is very positive to bank to SMEs and MSMEs in terms of actually getting loan from bank, except the federal government is now looking at a way to actually stand in the gap in that area. Maybe actually partnering with banks and actually creating funds to actually extend to this segment of the market at a cheaper level.
All right, finally, let's talk about Dangote Refinery. We've seen allegations, counter-allegations in the course of this week from the regulatory, petroleum, officers accusing him of products being substandard. And now we have another, alleged, allegation. What are the implications, for instance, for Nigeria's economy if NNPC personnel are indeed involved in operating a blending plant in Malta, as alleged by Aliko Dangote?
I think the problem currently in the country is that when we don't do things right, that we give room for rent seeking. This is a country that has 4 refineries and none is actually working. And it won't be so if at the end of the day it's true that there's some NNPC officials that actually have a refinery or a cracking or a melting plant somewhere in Malta. I think they need to, the government needs to find a way to actually bring them to book. It also means that all the while they have been the ones sabotaging the effort of the government to actually bring back or bring alive all the ailing refineries. So I think that the government needs to look at this issue to the end, and this is where the duty of EFCC comes in. I expect EFCC to come into issue and also investigate to the end, and also carry the whole populace along on this issue. We need to sanitize every area of the economy so as to actually move forward as a nation. And I think that if EFCC, if they are able to actually do their work very well, and they actually can come to the fore with the right or with the truth around this thing, this will help and also boost the image of the country in international markets. And on the part of that Dangote Refinery also, I think mentioning that the fuel or the products are actually substandard, I don't expect that to hear something like that from a regulator. And I think it's something that you can actually start with the business owners around that. Because this is a company that's already looking at exporting to neighboring countries. So if you, the owner, is already saying that the product is actually substandard, so what do you expect to actually hear from people that you are expected to actually export your products? And don't also forget that Nigeria Lifeline is basically so much on this refinery, because what it would do is that it will help us to prevent the hemorrhaging reserve. It will help us to actually improve the FX liquidity in the country, and also help Naira to actually appreciate and stabilize at a great level.
And that's a fine place to wrap it up. Thank you so much for your insight on the news. Head of Fixed Income and FX, Chapel High Denham Security Limited, Oladipo Ajayi. Many thanks again for your insight.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me here.
You're live with News Central TV. Let's take a short break. Stay with us. Thank you for staying tuned. When I head to Rivers State, where the Martin Amaule-led State House of Assembly has frowned at the continued stay in office of the Caretaker Committee chairman, despite a Supreme Court judgment declaring them illegal and wants them arrested. The Apex Court had recently given judgment on a case between the Attorney General of the Federation and the Attorneys General of the 36th state, declaring Caretaker Committee chairman illegal. At plenary on Monday, the leader of the House, Major Jack, informed the members of the certified true copy of the aforementioned Supreme Court judgment and its possession, which he laid before the Speaker. After voting, Amewole called on the police to arrest the Caretaker Committee chairman, wherever they were seen parading themselves.
agencies to the police to go after these people, to ask them to stop them from parading themselves as illegal caretaker committee members. And they should stop the paramount rulers, traditional rulers, chiefs, youth bodies, market people, women and men should stop dealing with them because they are impostors. Then radio stations, TVs, print media and etc. should stop regarding them as caretaker.
We should call on the Nigeria police to commence the immediate arrest of these impostors across the 23 local government areas of our dear states. Secondly, that we're going to call on all banks, government at all levels, residents of river states, all those doing business in river states, foreign embassies, all traditional institutions, even non-governmental organizations, everybody to disregard and immediately call the attention of law enforcement agencies whenever they see these impostors parading or moving on the streets in these states, asking for money, disturbing our market women in the markets, or disturbing our people in the motor parks, or asking people to pay rates or levies to these individuals. They should immediately report to police or other law enforcement agencies.
And to talk about this, I'm joined by member, Caretaker Committee, Port Harcourt Local Government Area, Tekena Bossi. Good afternoon. Glad to have you join me.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
All right. Perhaps I should start with what your thoughts are on the Martin Amaewhule-led House of Assembly, asking for the arrest of the CTC chairman. What are your thoughts?
It is very funny, how Martins and his colleagues, the former assembly members, would be calling on the police to make arrests. On what capacity? That's the question. What capacity does Martins and his former colleagues have to be calling on the police as security operatives to arrest the caretaker committee members and the chairman? For God's sake, Martins is not a member of the assembly, so there is no need to discuss him as far as I'm concerned. Martins Amaewhule and his colleagues or former assembly members are doing all in their power to cause an uprising in the state, but we won't give any room for that. So far, the caretaker members and the chairman are doing well. In just a month, see the massive empowerment programs going on in the 23 local government areas of the state. And this is what the Rivers people need. For 8 years in the previous administration, there were no empowerment in the state. We only see bridges. When people climb the bridges, go back home, what would they eat? So the state of moving forward and the people of Rivers are rejoicing. So I don't have anything to be concerned about Martin's statements, because he does not have himself and the colleagues, they don't have that capacity.
Mr. Bossi, just to chip in there, when you say on what capacity, critics say that following the Supreme Court ruling on local government, and so therefore the CTC chairman, that's the caretaker committee chairman inaugurated by the governor Sim Fubara, hereby illegal and should be dismissed. How do you react to that?
I would say that the caretaker committee has been in practice since this political dispensation. And presently, 22 states in the Federal Republic of Nigeria are operating caretaker committee. Why is it only in River States somebody is calling for the arrest of the caretaker committee chairman? It goes to show bitter political frustration as a result of failure to turn the state into one man's property. Based on the effect of the immediate seizure of LGA allocations to the states, operating caretaker committee, the federal government, in its wisdom, please quote me, the federal government in its wisdom has given 3 months deadline to states without elected LGA chairman to conduct elections. Why will anyone who cares about the plight of his people call on the federal government? Why singling out River State? The locus is for all states running caretaker committee to prepare for elections as soon as possible. No other states in Nigeria running the caretaker committee administration has called the police to arrest anyone. What is different about other states with River State? That illegal defector assembly members would have the guts to call on the police to arrest chairman. I don't understand what's going on.
Okay.
There can't be void and vacuum in transition. Even before the court judgment, the RISEC has already put down a date for the elections to be conducted in River State, which is in October. Yeah.
Now, just to come in there, just to chip in there, Mr. Bosse, I mean, there are growing concerns as to the plenary, the River State House of Assembly, having two factions, one led by Martin Amawole, the other one by Oko Jumbo. People have concerns as to how this is affecting the people themselves, who should be, beneficiaries of the dividends of democracy. In your own, estimation, what's the way forward in resolving this impasse where we have division in the House?
It is very simple and clear. The River State House of Assembly section has only one authentic membership, which is the House of Assembly led by Right Honorable Victor Okojombo. He is the authentic Speaker of the State House of Assembly. If you can recall, the former Speaker, who is now the Chief of Staff to the Governor, Right Honorable A. Edison, he declared the seats of the 27 Assembly members vacant while they defected to the APC. So in the 1999 Constitution, it is clear we are all Nigerians. We know the Constitution, so we see the Constitution. So the former members, they are no longer Assembly members. We only have the Assembly members led by Right Honorable Okojombo. That is the authentic Assembly member. Well, and I'll bring this to your table. The same people calling for the arrest of the caretaker committee chairman and the members. They are the same people that are running to the courts, trying to strip the governor, His Excellency Sasiminaye Fubara. They're trying to strip him off from conducting local government elections. So who is fooling who?
Well, if you say, just to, butt in there, if you say your own faction is a legal one, the other faction will tell you that's not true. Looking at the last court ruling, I mean, this is a matter of contention here. And they will say,
I am not saying it is my faction.
They are arguing that, just a minute, please.
Okay.
They would argue that based on the last court judgments, they were asked to maintain status quo. And here you are saying your own faction, is a legal one. So who do we believe in all of this? One faction is saying they are the legally constituted members of the House. The other is saying otherwise. I mean, I think looking ahead, what really should be the focus or goal? Because I think at the heart of this, those who bear the brunt are the people in Rivers.
Yeah, to cut a long story short, River State is moving forward. Businesses are growing. His Excellency, the leader of the state, His Excellency Sasiminaye Fubara, he's going about his executive duties. The commissioners are going about their job. The local government, the caretaker committee chairman and their members, they are going about their daily job responsibilities. Businesses are striving in the state. There is no problem in the state except for a faction of people that are used by one person for their own selfish interests to cause uprising in the state. If you come to River State, you can see everybody is going about their normal duties. So the people of River State are rejoicing with what's going on, with the services the governor has been giving, with the empowerment, which we have not seen for the past 8 to 16 years. We are benefiting it now. So why would a meaningful River son or daughter want to destroy the state? No, it's not possible.
Well, we'll hold our breath.
The citizens are happy with the leadership of His Excellency.
And that's a fine place to leave it. Well, we'll hold our breath and see how things pan out in River State. Hopefully, there'll be a lasting solution to the political impasse going on there. Well, thank you so much for your perspective on the news. Teken Agbosi, Caretaker Committee, Port Harcourt Local Government Area. Many thanks indeed for your time on the news.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Have a nice day.
The Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency has denied allegations by the nation's export regarding Promotion Council, saying that the agency has refused to remit 10% freight levies, which is due to the council since 1992. And this was during an investigative hearing in Abuja, organized by the House of Representatives Joint Committees on Commerce, Maritime Safety, Education, Administration, and Legislative Compliance. Our correspondent, Idong Joseph, tells us more.
Disputes over the claim for a 10% commission collected on freight between the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency and the Nigerian Export Promotion Council has raged for more than a decade now. While the council maintains that an act of the National Assembly compels the Safety Agency to fund its operations with 10% collected from freight remittances, it says that the failure of NIMASA to fulfill its obligations has impacted negatively on its operations.
There's been several letters. There was even a time that the Attorney General called for a meeting of Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, NIMASA, NEPC, as well as Ministry of Transport, just to ensure that these funds are released, knowing the importance of what these funds would do for the economy. Again, all of these have been deferred.
While responding to the alleged claims by the council during an investigative hearing at the House of Representatives, NIMASA denies the claims.
Reference to the 50% revenue accruable to the federal government, it was the House that passed the Finance Act and amended it. This is actually secondary. It will be possible for us to consider it if it exists in our law. We cannot alter the provisions of the NIMASA Act.
Lawmakers expressed concerns that the impact is affecting government's operations, calling on agencies to collaborate instead of being at loggerheads.
To avert conflicts of this nature, MDS must demonstrate high level of accountability, transparency, and openness in their duties and communicate more favorably.
The essence of this gathering is for us all to find the truth and also a lasting solution to this lingering issue.
The leadership of the House of Representatives, after listening to both parties, directed them to find a common ground and resolve the disagreements, emphasizing the need for synergy for the good of all citizens. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
The Stella Obasanjo Child Care Trust Center, a facility for children with disabilities, is facing severe underfunding and underutilization. Now, caregivers at the center, established by the late wife of former president, are urging for immediate funding and equipment to address the critical situation and ensure the center can continue providing vital support to children in need. Joshua Imarai tells us more.
Joan, along with other children, receive specialized care at the Child Care Trust in the Buhari Area Council of Abuja, Nigeria's federal capital. This center was established with the vision of providing dedicated support for children with special needs in Nigeria.
The former First Lady, Her Excellency Mrs. Stella Obasanjo, had a huge vision for special needs children, and she started this center at a rented apartment somewhere in 1999. And then by the year 2002, this structure was built.
This school here, this center, actually is an opportunity and a center to help those who otherwise would have been abandoned by society.
Despite its capabilities, the Child Care Center in Abuja faces a dire reality: underutilization and underfunding.
This is a center that should cater for 120 special needs children, but we have just 26 kids. We're appealing for special needs family. Don't lock up your children at home. Bring them here so that we can help them with early intervention. Even for those who early intervention will not be possible anymore, we have a conducive environment where we can actually give them quality of life to help you and for you to also appreciate your children.
Most importantly, these children, we cannot define them by their nature, but we define them as people with ability, because we believe that the teachers that are going to train them are capable of doing that.
By giving them opportunity, making sure that they are healthy, making sure that their nutritional needs are met, you give them the opportunity to grow up and be useful to society.
Caregivers at the Child Care Trust Center are calling on citizens to support the center's operation so that it can continue providing adequate care to children with special needs. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarayi.
Thank you for staying with us. The news continues in West Africa, where a Sierra Leone court has convicted 11 individuals of treason and other offenses related to an attempted coup last November. Among those convicted is Amadou Koité Makolo, a former soldier and bodyguard to ex-president Ernest Bai Koroma. Makolo received a combined sentence of 182 years for charges including treason, murder, and shooting with intent to murder. The other 10 were also found guilty of treason and murder. The coup attempt occurred on November 26th when armed attackers stormed the military armory, 2 barracks, 2 prisons, and 2 police stations. In the ensuing clashes with security forces, 21 people were killed and hundreds of prisoners escaped. Authorities have identified the attackers as members of the armed forces. 1 year after the coup in the Niger Republic, ousted President Mohamed Bazoum remains under strict detention in Niamey, held by the ruling military regime. The prospect of a looming trial is causing concern among those close to him. Bazoum was overthrown on July 26, 2023 by General Abdurrahman Chiani, the head of his presidential guard. Despite being elected in 2021, Bazoum has never resigned and continues to assert his claim to the presidency of the Sahelian nation. Since the coup, Bazoum and his wife have been confined to the presidential palace in Niamey. His last public appearance was on August 19, 2023, when national television broadcast footage of him on the steps of the residence during a visit by a Nigerian mediator. In East of Africa, Kenya's President William Ruto has called for an end to the ongoing protests in the East African country. He emphasized that moving forward, he will protect the nation using democratic means. Ruto also highlighted that his administration has already made significant concessions in response to the demands of the leaderless and faceless Gen Z protesters, including rejecting the Finance Bill 2024 and dismissing almost the entire cabinet. Despite these actions, the protests have continued unabated. Police in Uganda are on high alert following the planned protests by youths. On Monday, ahead of the planned protest, the police raided the main opposition headquarters on the eve of an anti-government demonstration. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni warned on Saturday that organizers of the planned march to Parliament were playing with fire. Young Ugandans have been mobilized in support online for the march to demand an end to what they say are high levels of corruption and bad governance. They have partly been inspired by their counterparts in neighboring Kenya, whose recent mass protests forced their president to axe plans to increase taxes. In Southern Africa, the South African Department of Labour has introduced a robust new system, and this was made for workers to report companies that fail to comply with the country's labour laws. The department is also conducting raids and follow-up inspections to aid employers address all violations, particularly those related to the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Their goal is to ensure full compliance, addressing 100% of non-compliant employers as mandated by labour regulations.
The findings is that the company does not comply with the compensation fund legislation, in that there are 4 employees that were injured, and those injuries were not reported to the Department of Employment and Labor. And when we check here, we found no record of such employees having been reported, and also there is no record of injuries, nor any record in terms of the payment or submission of return of earnings to the Department of Employment and Labor. And also in terms of the unemployment insurance legislation, we do not get any documentation which proves in terms of the payroll that they indeed they are registered, they declare, and they make payments to the fund. And also in terms of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, we are worried that there is no categorization of employees. They are declared as general employees, all of them, whereas in reality we have got packers, we have got the drivers, we have got the machine operators, cleaners, and different categories who are not categorized, and even their contracts of employment do not comply with Section 29 of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. Despite that, they were assisted by a labor broker, and in that we are not able to determine their payments in terms of the basic conditions and the national minimum wage, because there is no basic salary that is reflected, nor in terms of the stock that
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has secured the required delegates to clinch the 2024 Democratic presidential nomination. And this milestone follows President Joe Biden's withdrawal from the race and his endorsement of Harris on Sunday. Delegates counts confirm that 59-year-old Harris has surpassed the 1,976 delegates needed to win the party's nomination in the first round of voting. The Democratic Party has a total of 3,936 delegates, including former president, state and local party leaders, members of Congress, and governors. However, only about half are eligible to vote in the first round. In a vote called by former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, California's delegates unanimously backed Harris on Monday evening, pushing her over the top and solidifying her position as the party's nominee. And to talk about this, I am joined by our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Afia, what happens next in the stage of the Democratic nomination?
Well, Vice President Kamala Harris has got enough votes from the delegates to be able to surpass the number needed to have the Democratic nomination. Now, that's just people saying that they would be in favor of her being the nominee for president. However, they actually do have to take a vote on this, and that will happen between August 1st and August 7th, which is ahead of the Democratic National Convention, which takes place from the 19th to the 22nd of August. Now, Vice President Harris has had a huge sort of 48 hours of fundraising. It's the biggest 48 hours of fundraising ever in any political race. She's now raised over $100 million from her campaign, and 888,000 donors making donations of under $200. And what that tells you is the grassroots of the Democratic Party. That's the everyday Joes in the party are now much more energized than they were under the prospect of Joe Biden running for election and being the presidential nominee. You also had that Zoom call which took place on Sunday evening, where you had 44,000 black women from Win With Black Women. That's a group of black women leaders. Then they raised $1.5 million as well. And so it seems that Kamala Harris has done what the Democratic Party really needed and got them energized and got them excited again about the election. Therefore, the donations are pouring in, and it looks like she could be on her way to nomination. But like I said, the Democratic Party will meet between August 1st and 7th and formally decide that she will be the nominee. And it's highly likely that it will be Vice President Kamala Harris who will be the Democratic nominee.
Well, we understand that President Joe Biden has broken his silence since his decision to pull out of the race for the White House. But what more has he said?
Yes, that's right. So President Joe Biden has been recovering from COVID-19. Yesterday, he called his staff And he thanked aides and told them to embrace Harris because she's the best. He said, I know yesterday's news was surprising and hard for you to hear, but it was the right thing to do. He acknowledged that the campaign team had poured their heart and soul into helping him stay in office for a second term, but he vowed to stay fully engaged in the campaign and said, I'm not going anywhere now. Mr. Biden is due to return to the White House this afternoon after self-isolating in Delaware after that COVID-19 diagnosis. He will be meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday. That's a meeting that was pushed back from today because of that COVID-19 diagnosis. He will be meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister on Thursday, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be addressing Congress as well on Thursday. Now, that's something that Vice President Harris won't be present at. It's a bipartisan thing, so it's open to Republicans and Democrats. Not all of them are attending either. So, yes, President Biden will be back to the White House today and back working by Thursday.
Well, I know we've seen different reports of polls between Donald Trump and also Kamala Harris. But then what's the feeling like in the U.S.? Do you think Kamala Harris has what it takes to beat Donald Trump in the election?
And that really is the huge question on everybody's lips. Like, there's no doubt that Democrats do seem reinvigorated and energized. At the moment, Vice President Harris is still trailing Donald Trump in the polls of who would win if people voted today, for instance. But the path to nomination for her is secure, and that is probably going to be the easy part. It's a real formidable challenge for Vice President Harris, but her campaign will be the prosecutor. You know, she used to be a prosecutor against the criminal, and that's how they will try and peg this going forward. You know, she has been endorsed by really big people in the Democratic Party. It's still a tight race, absolutely. And the challenge will be for her, and what her party and what her campaign team will try and do is use this prosecutor versus the criminal, look at Donald Trump's aversion, look at all the wrongs that he's done, and instead of looking at her record or not in office as VP, look forward to what she could potentially do as president. She's younger at only 59 years old, and that is something that when the question of age was in the election, President Biden was the older one, Donald Trump was the one that was presenting as more energetic. Now that has flipped. You have a younger candidate in Vice President Harris, and then we're trying to use that to her advantage as well. And what she needs to do is try and get the people in the middle, those middle voters, those undecided, who could go either way. If she can nail those, then perhaps she could take the White House.
Well, thank you so much for bringing context to this. Afia Hagan, our international correspondent. Many thanks indeed. And that's all on the news at this hour. But before we go, let's take a look again at some of the major stories. Senate speedily passed national minimum wage bill into law. Central Bank of Nigeria raises interest rate to 26.75% amid soaring inflation. We also told you that Ugandan authorities have cracked down on opposition ahead of protests. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen, and do follow us on social media. We are at New Central TV. You can watch us live on the DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Abo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adedugba.